Welcome back to the Training Without Conflict podcast. Today, we are diving into a heated topic in the dog training world, errorless learning and Eduardo Fernandez's so-called LIFE model. LIFE stands for Least Inhibitive, Functionally Effective. Before we start, let's address the elephant in the room. Some for sure are going to say, Fernandez has a PhD, what's your degree? And it's a fair question. I don't have a PhD, but I've got something else. Decades of real world results. 2 world championship titles, 16 national titles in dog sports, and of course, thousands of dogs trained to thrive in chaotic real life environments. My expertise comes from hands-on success, not ivory tower theories. While Fernandez studies behavior in labs, I've built my career on what actually works for dogs and their owners. So let's judge the ideas on their merits and not just credentials. Now, the concepts. Errorless learning and life sound appealing. Who wouldn't want a dog to learn without mistakes? Who wouldn't want training to be less inhibitive and more ethical? But dig deeper and the science becomes shaky. The methods fail in practice and the ideology behind them is more propaganda than progress. Today, I am going to tear apart the promises, expose the failures, and show why these models aren't just flawed, but they are dangerous when taken as a gospel. So, errorless learning, the sales pitch versus reality. Errorless learning comes from behaviorism, tested on pigeons in a narrow task, color discriminations. It was Herbert Terrace. He set up so one key, let's say the red key, was gradually reinforced as the correct response, while the wrong one, green, is faded in slowly from dim to bright. And what's the goal? Stop the dog from ever making the wrong choice. But simple tasks like that don't mirror real learning. Training in the real world involves unpredictability, emotions, motor skills, risks, social cues. In theory, errorless learning offers fewer mistakes, faster results, and less frustration. It sounds perfect, doesn't it? But here is the truth. Real learning needs mistakes. True learning thrives on mistakes. Skinner's genius wasn't just reinforcement. It was realizing that operant behavior is emitted, that is spontaneously generated, not just triggered like a reflex. Think of Pavlov dogs. They salivated to a bell, but they were strapped in harnesses. The dogs had no choice. They were purposefully restricted so they couldn't do much. Now, imagine what would the experiment look like if the dogs were free. We would see a variety of other behaviors. We would see barking, jumping, spinning, pawing, basically a flood of varied, unprompted behaviors. And that's the difference. Pavlov found the reflexes, and Skinner showed that behaviors come from within. The animal offers them freely. This connects to Darwin, and it's important. In evolution, variation creates a range of traits for natural selection to act on. In behaviorism, variations provide a variety of behaviors for reinforcement and punishment to select from. The force-free advocates might argue that errorless learning still uses reinforcement to select behaviors, like in Terrace's color discrimination tasks. And sure, in a tightly controlled lab setting, you can guide a pigeon to pick the right color with minimal errors. But that's a far cry from real-world dog training. Errorless learning suppresses the natural variation dogs offer, different sits, healing styles, or problem-solving attempts to force a single correct response. Without this variation, there are fewer behaviors to reinforce or punish, stunting the development of new association strategies or creativity. In real life, dogs need that variation to adapt to complex environment, not just to pick red over green. Skinner called this selection by consequences. Reinforcement picks what sticks, what we like to see more of, like in a flashy and precise sit or a correct competition healing. But punishment plays a role as well. It weeds out behaviors we don't want, and therefore it actually sharpens the process. So if there is no variation, there is nothing to select. No reinforcement or no punishment, no refinement. It's just chaos or a mechanical responses. That's why I think errorless methods fail. They kind of choke the variation, and variation for many of us dog trainers is the heart of learning. The result is scripted. It's like action with no depth, no problem solving, no resilience. There is no spark in there. When force-free trainers claim errorless success because the dog doesn't visibly fail, they're often just like, I don't know, over-prompting or something. The dog isn't learning. It's being spoon-fed. It's micromanaged. However, what happens later on when complexity hits, when prompts fade or generalization is needed? Now confusion creeps in. There is hesitation. There is guessing. In short, what I'm saying is that errors will happen anyway, and that fleeting moment of uncertainty, for me, it's worth more than 20 perfect reps. Why? Well, because it forces the dog to think, to adapt, and ultimately learn. So, my bottom line here, force-free trainers might definitely, of course, claim errorless learning teaches basic skills like choosing a color in a laboratory. But to me, that's, and not just to me, to most dog trainers, that's a surface level compliance. That's not true learning. Real learning happens when dogs have freedom to choose, make mistakes, and adapt. This is really what seals resilient, flexible behaviors that hold up in real world. In errorless learning, the dog is guided to perform the correct behavior, but without ever confronting the wrong one. Think about this. There is no real decision, no real consequence. Redirecting a dog to sit instead of chasing a snake or bolting into traffic may look clean, but it completely misses the point. The dog doesn't learn why those actions are dangerous. It learns that sitting is reinforced when cued. And that is entirely different lesson. The problem isn't just that training is incomplete. The problem is that it teaches the wrong thing. Instead of learning to avoid danger, the dog learns to perform obedience in a narrow, controlled scenario. And this derails the true objective of the training. Anyone that pays attention can see that flaw. It's not preparing the dog for the world. It's preparing the dog for the trainers with fantasy. Yeah. Now let's go to the study that tried to prove that, and it basically crashed. So let's dive into the paper of Eduardo Fernandez and his colleagues. The paper is called Comparing Trial and Error to Errorless Learning in Pet Dogs. The study aimed to show errorless learning. It's better and it's more humane for teaching a simple visual discrimination, picking the right color circle. Same experiment as terraces with the colors. It's a discrimination, and this is very important. But let's go deep. So what did they do? They took 24 pet dogs. Half of the dogs got the trial and error learning, and half were taught errorless learning with the stimulus fading, as I was just explaining. Excuse me. In theory, the errorless learning group should shine. There should be, for sure, faster learning, fewer errors, if actually no errors, less stress, and so on. But the study is a mess. First, we need to talk and really acknowledge the dropout rate. Just here, the study can we can be done. They start with 24 dogs, and guess what? Only 8 reach the final stage. So that is what, like a 66% dropout. That's 2/3 of the dogs that couldn't even handle the basics. Why? Some refused treats, others showed fear or anxiety, or failed to learn simple tasks in time. I mean, imagine if most pet dogs cannot participate in such a study. How is this practical? It's at best it's a filter for the easiest cases, but definitely not a training solution. I mean, we can just stop right here. We go on. Second, we have the unequal training. The errorless group got an extra stage. 5 sessions of 10 trials of each for stimulus fading. So that means what? More reps, more exposure. It sounds like a little bit of a head start. On one reason, perhaps, they outperform is that they had more practice. I don't know. Third, no real feedback on errors on the trial and error group. There were no signals, like nobody was saying wrong or no, or any feedback that the trial and error dogs did something wrong. So what kind of trial and error is that? In the trial and error group, the stimulus basically, from my understanding, was just vanished. There is no correction, no guidance, no try again. That's not trial and error. I mean, God, imagine a kid taking a math test and getting the wrong answer, and the teacher just snatches the paper and leaves. What did the kid learn? Nothing. Maybe just got frustrated or said, I'm done with math classes. That's not how you do. Well, we have the fourth one that kind of I want to mention also is the overall, in my opinion, sloppy methodology. Like there were certain number of daily session, but the actual session didn't match. They range from 1 to 12 minutes with breaks from 2 to 30 minutes. Training went for 3-4 days, which, like if you calculate, it would average 6.8 session per dog, but varying from 1 to 15. Now, to me, that's not science. It's just chaos. It's skewing results based on, I don't know, mood or stamina. I don't know. So, again, let's bring the fifth problem with the study, really a skewed data presentation. And there is, I will post the studies and like the Errorless Learning and the Lima proposal that he made in the links. But like if you look at that there is that figure 8, it shows correct responses over, I believe it's like the first 8 discrimination sessions. But the errorless dogs had their fading stage first. So there is no question that they were primed. Trial and error dogs were basically just thrown in the cold. Okay, yeah, no wonder the errorless looked better early. But it's a rigged comparison. Yes, errorless dogs hit the criteria more often. I think it's like 3 out of 4 versus 1 out of 4, and showed fewer frustration signs, like the whining, freezing, lip licking, and all this. You know what I'm talking about. But let's look closer. Errorless had more incorrect touches. It was like, and I have it here, it's 41.6% versus 36%, while trial and error had more non-responses, dog stalling, kind of confused, freezing. And the only reason that I can guess would be likely from I don't know, unclear feedback. Like, and let's agree on this. I mean, these aren't small errors. They're, in my opinion, deliberate choices that tilt the scale towards errorless learning. Now, here's the question, why? And that's where I'm going with this. I think it's to prop up Fernandez's life model as the scientific successor to Lima. I should mention something here. I should have mentioned it earlier on, but here we go. I've probably spent about 2 years trying to get Eduardo on my podcast for an open debate. He would agree, but then demand a moderator, a panel, or a live format so we avoid editing and skewing the conversation. Well, I said yes to every condition, but it's clear to me now that he won't defend his work head on. And that says it all. Let's move on. Why errorless learning doesn't scale? Let's forget the study's flaws for a moment. Errorless learning still collapses in the real world. As I believe I already mentioned, a dog trained errorlessly to sit near a snake or a road might comply in a specific setting, but it's very likely to fail in a park or whatever, because it never learned the why behind the cue. Even in, I mean, I know everybody is into AI, and we all should be, but even AI, trial and error, it's not a bug. It's actually the engine of machine learning. Like errors refine the models. Shaping cuts the waste, sure, but variation and correction is what I think fuels the progress. In humans, we grow through mistakes. A rider sharpens through editing, right? A child learns balance by wobbling, failing, and not being propped up forever. These are facts. In dogs, 100% errorless fake success. When we shift context and generalize to real life, the illusion just cracks and crumbles and it's over. And yeah, basically, I don't know, errorless becomes at some point error prone. And sure, it might work for rote tasks in sterile environment, but for teaching living thinking animals to adapt and thrive, I think it's a dead end. It's dangerous as it leaves dogs unprepared for reality. Now, having said all this, I also must tell you that overall, I truly love the idea of errorless learning. We spent a good amount of time at my TWC Academy studying and understanding it. Why? Because even to attempt to create errorless learning, you have to be able to design an amazing training plan. In other words, if you start out thinking you're doing errorless training, but eventually you introduce trial and error, the results can be incredible. I've had some of the most influential psychology professors deeply involved in dog science watch me teach something and be absolutely convinced they were witnessing 100% errorless learning, until I pointed out the exact moment everything shifted. Let's go to the life model. I would think it's an ideology masquerading as science. Now, the real agenda. Fernandez's life model. Life, again, stands for least inhibitive, functionally effective. A while back, I don't know, I mean, it's actually really a while back, Stephen Lindsay shared his LIMA, which stands for least intrusive, minimally aversive hierarchy. And basically, it's a proposal kind of like start mild and escalate if needed. I have my opinions on it. I'll share it. I don't think LIMA is perfect. I think it's overly cautious. It's kind of like a doctor prescribing aspirin for gangrene when clearly at this point amputation is needed. Like you hesitate for too long with mild steps and the problem worsens. Losing a toe becomes losing a leg or losing a life. As I was talking recently on one of my podcasts about an accident that I had to go to the hospital for. Anyway, let's not sidetrack. LIMA. LIMA's kind of like the step-by-step model, basically can delay critical actions, letting severe behavior just spiral. But it gets worse. And it gets worse with the force-free advocates that actually twisted LIMA into no aversive ever, or only right before the dog is to be euthanized. Then maybe we can do something. That's not what LIMA is about. Now, life claims to be the scientific upgrade. So let's break it down. Least inhibitive. It sounds nice, right? What it does? It should maximize choices and minimize restrictions. But think about it a little bit, and you will realize that it's actually it's paralyzing. For urgent issues, let's talk aggression, predation, self-harm, so on. We need, at times, immediate inhibition. And life has absolutely no plan for such crisis. It is vague on function, and of course it dodges all the important tools. It ignores punishment entirely. The reality is that when used wisely, punishment clarifies boundaries, speeds up learning, makes consequences real. Life, on the other hand, pretends this is outdated and is betting everything on positive reinforcement. It's the one size fits all. Dogs, parrots, I don't know, chimps, zoo animals, same rules across the board. It's laughable. I mean, there are different drives, contexts, needs. They differ vastly across different species and environments. There's just, it doesn't make no sense. And then we come to the ethics argument. Life equates it with minimal intervention, letting behaviors run free in the name of, I don't know, kindness or something. But at the same time, ignoring dangerous behaviors. That's not compassionate, that's reckless. True ethics balance welfare with safety. And I probably have to repeat this one more time. True ethics balance welfare with safety. I call life least inhibitive, functionally disastrous. It just flops in reality. The paper mentions some of Lima's flaws, like possibly the vague terms, some aversive loopholes, and so on. But life, Eduardo's life, just kind of repackages the whole thing in a feel-good welfare jargon without any real solutions. Now, is that science? I don't know. Behavior principles? Okay. But cherry-picked to shun punishment, ignoring the full toolbox of operant conditioning. Give me a second. Now, the bigger issue is it science or is it advocacy? Because everybody knows this is not neutral research. It's advocacy dressed as science, period. Fernandez and his allies aren't just testing methods, they're pushing an ideology. And you know, aversives are always evil, errors are always bad, and ethics means maybe do nothing. Real science demands objectivity. And this is politics. What's the fallout? Dogs get half-assed training, end up in shelters. Trainers chase rainbows and unicorns because that's the promise. Owners get the catchy slogans instead of actual solution. It's not just ineffective, it's irresponsible, okay? Now, what training actually is? Dog training isn't about dodging errors. It's about preparing dogs to succeed in our messy human world and also the dog sports. That means boundaries, consequences, and clarity. Reinforcement builds what's right, what we want. Punishment curbs what's wrong. Fairness ties it together. Ethical training isn't not about shielding dogs from inhibition. It's about equipping them to thrive. Yeah, I get excited. Knowing no as clearly as yes. That's cooperation, that's trust, that's rapport. Now, I'm almost done with my rant here, but next time someone pitches errorless learning or life as the ethical gold standard, we need to see it, we need to look at it for what it actually is. It's nothing but a sales pitch designed to seduce, but it strips away the core of real learning. Don't buy the propaganda dressed in science, guys. I want to end this one with keeping my invitation to Eduardo Fernandez open for conversation. Even though I've given him enough to prepare for that conversation. I would love to have that. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure some people will agree with me, some will not, but we need to have the conversation, and we need to defend our rights to be able to train dogs effectively. So, anyway, take care.